I'm going to speak in favour of neutrality. I think if Alan didn't mention it today, he might have mentioned in some of his utterances on this subject, which has been making over the last few months, that there's a sort of boring kind of neutrality that museums do, particularly museums of old art, and they could liven up the situation a bit if they injected a bit of passion. Now, what I take from Alan's thesis is a sort of an impression of bafflement that he has and boredom in museums. Why are they not whipping us up? Why are they not pointing to great meanings that the works have? Why are they only telling us that Piero painted the baptism of Christ in about, they don't even know the real date, in about 1450? And, why have they put all the Venetian stuff in the Venetian room? And why not say, this is the room of passion, or this is the room of courage, or this is the room of tenderness? Since these would be emotions or virtues or values which we could relate to with our whole being, or the profundity of our being, rather than merely saying, well, yes, in a rather sort of tedious way, and how marvellous that Piero painted the baptism of Christ in 1450. Now, I think where Alain is going wrong is to suppose that neutrality, so-called, in the museums of old art, is nothing. And the problem is the lack of something. I would say that the neutrality is there in order to encourage a reading of the great something that all the paintings have. That once you start telling everybody what the meanings are and where the meanings lie and what it is that makes a painting urgent and vital and important, you have to start doing a sort of isolating of qualities and virtues. So if we take that Piero painting of the baptism of Christ, which every single person in this room more or less knows, where would you begin to say that this is the painting of courage, or this is the painting of virtue, or this is the painting of the essential message of Christ? Which is the essential bit? And which is the essentially timeless bit, and which is the bit that we can all relate to now, and which is the bit that relates to preoccupations of people in circa the 1450s. It would be very hard to do. And if you were to say, as Alan sort of slightly advocates, let's have a room of baptisms of Christ, so that we can look at this great moment in the three of the New Testament Gospels, where we hear about God's manifestation on earth through this being, this super being of Jesus, the moment when he's sort of owned by God. What would we then do with the immense stylistic and visual differences that would exist between all those works over the immense period in which Christian art was produced, from the 2nd or 3rd centuries right up until the 19th century or so, or the 18th century, more like early 18th century, where that stuff really dominated art production? We would be looking at a horrible visual jumble of different styles, and we would suddenly be reminded that neutrality is not merely in the service of a dried-up sort of academic notion of when things happened. There's also a sort of visual aim that neutrality serves. When works from a certain period are put together, or works of a certain genre are put together, or works by a certain artist are put together, it is in order to put like with like, so that we can so much the better see what is strong about that work, and perhaps appreciate even more the differences between one work and another, and so that we are not distracted by irrelevant differences. Neutrality is never really neutral. None of these values are absolute. But neutrality is a sort of an aim that the museum inherits from the Age of Enlightenment, where people were preoccupied with the fantastic new notion of classification. We don't hold on to it, museums don't hold on to it because of misguided allegiance to outmoded values that come from the 18th century. We hold on to it because it's useful. It serves the purpose of honouring that art and making that art look great. Art is primarily visual. Whatever other ideas it has to serve, it has to be visually efficient to begin with. So we don't want that visual greatness that art gathered together in museums has, to be undermined by a jumble of disparate notions that the literal meaning or the subject matter of the art might be showing us. Now, I have concentrated in my talk now in defense of a neutral showing of the great works of the past, of course, on the museums of the past. One of the problems, I think, in what Alain is saying is that there's a sliding back and forth between everybody's very vivid picture of museums of contemporary art and museums that deal with the art of history or historical art. I think they both have very different functions and very different approaches. And it's as if Alain is asking for the sort of rather headline meanings, or the meanings that can be grasped very simply, that go on in contemporary art museums, but for those, the simplicity and almost shallowness of those ideas to be replaced by the profundity of the art of the past. And there's a clash there that can't be resolved. I think museums of the present, like Tate Modern, are really about whipping up interest in the sort of democratic processes and individualism and plurality of meanings and identities that go on at the moment. We applaud everyone can be an artist, everyone can have a go. The art of history is slightly different, and the reason why neutrality reigns in the art of the past, or in the museums that show the art of the past, and is not so much present in the museums of the present, is that neutrality serves the art of the past. The art of the past has much richer and greater levels and depths of profundity. It is telling us more in its iconographic meanings, that is the subject and the symbols, and it is giving us more in the sort of aesthetic and visual richness of the art. With the art of the present, we take our chances with what's happening. We agree, there's a sort of agreement that the art of the present is lively and buzzing and clues us right into what's going on now, the attitudes of now. And we accept that there's a certain loss in a sort of sustained high level of achievement. And we don't complain about that. You know, sometimes that achievement comes through and sometimes it doesn't because other things are more fun about it. I don't think Alain realizes in what he's saying how much what he's asking for is already there in contemporary art museums, and conversely, how much it would be better if it wasn't there in museums of more historic.